Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win, and we're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at the Typhon's Veil armor set. Even though this should probably be spelled with another O and called Typhoon, but this is what it is, the Typhon's Veil. Two-piece bonus, double the duration of Hydras and increase the number of heads on multiple-headed Hydras by 2. Four-piece bonus, damage taken is reduced by 8% for each Hydra head alive. Each time you take damage, a head dies. And obviously, as you can see as well, a head cannot die more than once every 2 seconds. Six-piece bonus, basically Hydras get increased to 2,000% damage based on the amount of Hydras you have. To help with this build, we are using the Tasker Theo gloves, Death Wish, which will help with channeling because we are going to be channeling some Arcane Torrent. The Witching Hour is a placeholder, so don't really pay too much attention to this. Pretty much a full piece of Typhoon, or Typhon, for the exception of Tasker and Theo. We're also going to be using Convention of Elements, Halo of Career. Winter Flurry is mandatory for offhand. This says enemies killed by cold damage have 103% damage, and also when you cast a Blizzard, Hydras deal up to 150% damage as well. Traveler's Pledge is a placeholder here. Again, disregard. You don't really need a necklace. So Blizzard, we're going to be using, obviously, Arcane Torrent, Flame Ward, very important to run that for giving us a little bit more tankiness, Teleport, Safe Passage, Storm Armor, Power of the Storms, Magic Weapon, Deflection, this way we have some shields to give us a little bit more tankiness, Hydra, Frost Hydra, this is a Frost Hydra build, so we're going to be using a lot of Frost Nova in this, Passive, Galvanizing 1, Unwavering Will, Illusionist, and also Audacity, because we want to deal more damage. In the Knight's Cube, this is incredibly important. You have to run all three of these. Serpent Sparker, the Magistrate, and Ring of Royal Grandeur. This way, we will get more damage from the Hydras, and they will be able to do more damage based on the fact that they are considered a pet build, which is why Tasker and Theo, in conjunction with the Magistrate, is really, really good to get you billions of damage that you're probably going to be hitting with very early on. For the purposes of today's showcase, what we will be looking at is how well this performs after Season 23's changes. Fortunately, Typhon set didn't really get hit at all by any nerfs or anything. In fact, it was buffed in Season 22 of Diablo, where the 6-piece bonus got an increased amount of damage, which is very, very good for what we are trying to accomplish. This is considered an S-tier build for the Wizard class. The other build would be Chantotumvir, which we have covered on the channel before. Simply look in our playlist if you were looking to do that build. This one is more of a push variant as opposed to speed builds. For those of you who are not familiar with push builds, what that basically is that you just push to the end goal, so you're not trying to speed run for things, you're just trying to push things back further and further until you reach the end goal. But on lower greater rifts such as this is a greater rift 60, which is Torment 13 difficulty, you should be able to speed through things pretty fast. You should probably go for about somewhere between 4 to 5 minutes tops. Now, when you get into a greater rift, the strategy here is going to be very simplistic. First things first, you want to cast your Storm Armor and your Magic Reflector. That way you can build up the shields right off the gate so you don't take any unforeseen damage that could potentially one-shot you. Next thing you're going to do is cast, as you see, a Frost Hydra. Then you want to channel or cast your Blizzard. Keep in mind that because when an enemy runs into Blizzard, it actually deals more damage, or gets more damage taken to it via the Hydras. So it's very important to cast the Blizzards. One of the good things is, particularly the Ruin we're using, Blizzard lasts a long time. And because the way mobs are programmed in Diablo 3, they're programmed that if they see you on sight, they are going to target you, they're going to chase after you, they're going to follow you. So you can lead them into a Blizzard that already has a Hydra. Particularly optimal place for Hydra is that you set one Hydra down, and then you set another one further away. Sometimes, depending on the layout, case in this point for this particular dungeon, you can set them basically in the corridors. That way you can lead enemies to the corridor. You can take out things before you even see them. It's very, very good. It's a matter of placing it. It takes a little time to get used to placing the Hydras in particular, but after a couple of runs, you'll start to see the gist of it. Every time, you'll see here, I'm going to put pretty much a Frost Hydra ahead of me. That way it can kind of scout the area, take out the mobs, and then I don't have to really go full force. since it's a pet build, your pets are the ones that are doing the damage. So really with Flame Ward in particular on this build, it's just when you run into higher greater rifts where you're running into elite packs and there's a whole bunch of enemies on the screen, you basically want to increase the amount of defense you have. But the strategy here is very simplistic. This is a very simplistic build. Cast a Blizzard, have a Hydra in that Blizzard or near that Blizzard, lead the enemies into the Blizzard so that the Hydras can take them out super fast. And when you don't necessarily even need to cast a Blizzard, simply cast a Hydra in corridors, long hallways, position them where you're somewhere in between both where you have the Hydras. That way you can have enemies come to you, and the Hydras should, in theory, if you follow my advice and follow the build to the T, be able to take things out, as you're seeing here, super fast. Now, keep in mind that because this is a very deceptively tanky set, you can kind of get very creative and get a little bit more aggro than you normally would with a different type of wizard set armor. Now, case in point here, since that was an elite pack that had a shield, it's very imperative that you cast a Blizzard and then have a Hydra very close nearby, and usually it's going to one-shot things. On average, in a Torment 13 difficulty setting, which is greater of 60, you should be swinging for, on average, anywhere between 250 million to 250 billion, depending on whether you cast that Blizzard and things are in the Blizzard or not. Now, to further optimize this armor, my suggestion, and keep in mind this is only a suggestion, this is not something that you necessarily have to follow to the T, but this is where I've had the most success in terms of experimentation. Let me cast the Blizzard here and take out the Rift Guardian. As you can see, this one-shots Rift Guardians, so you're not even looking at them. I think we blinked and it was dead. But for optimization purposes, my recommendation, as always, on the helm, I would recommend getting 6.0 crit hit chance. That way you can deal the most amount of chance to get a critical hit. More critical hit damage means that you're doing the maximum amount of damage to an enemy, which is something you should not scoff over. On the gloves, my recommendation as always, and I know this will take a while for people to get because there is RNG that we have to factor in and everything, I would say attack speed 6.0 on the gloves, or at least 8.0 if you can. It depends on whether you get an Ancient Legendary roll. I would also recommend on the gloves, critical hit damage 50%. Don't settle for anything less, maybe 49% if you're really unlucky. 50% will give you a maximum amount of damage as well in there. Crit hit chance 8.0%. If you have all three of those particular stats on your gloves, you are going to see somewhere between maybe a 2,000 to 4,000 increase in the amount of damage output that you would naturally be doing on your particular set armor. Now, in terms of our optimization, since this is primarily a Hydra build where Hydras are going to be doing the main source of damage for you to be able to clear things, anywhere on your armor where you can increase the Hydra's damage by 15%, definitely invest in that. The reason for this is they will deal more damage on top of all the extra damage multipliers based on what our gear is. So very important. Invest in Hydras. You could invest in Blizzard, but I really don't think it's worth it because of the offhand anyway. It's really just to augment the amount of damage for the Hydras, which is why we cast Blizzards. And as well as the Ruin is giving us a bit more damage with Blizzard anyway. So it's not really necessary to amplify that. Now, other things that you could potentially put on the Hydra build, well, keep in mind Hydras are a channeling cost. It's not really like you have to wait for Hydras to be on cooldown. You don't have to have Flame Ward on cooldown. Blizzard you can always click into, and usually Storm Armor, Magic Reflector always. So you don't actually have to worry about cooldown reduction on the set. Instead, my recommendation actually would be to invest in resource cost. Why? Because if you invest in resource cost reduction, it will cost less arcane to be able to cast the Hydras and cast the Blizzards, which, as you can see from the showcase, you are going to be casting quite a lot. This is the main rotation. You're always going to be casting a Blizzard and then a Hydra, and then somewhere along the line, another Hydra. And then, pretty much, maybe if you see something that's a bit more tankier, or you're in a situation where you see you're potentially going to take a lot of hits, primarily on the higher Greater Rift settings. This is a Greater Rift 65, by the way. My recommendation would be to go resource cost reduction over cooldown. We don't use any skill necessarily on this set that requires cooldown. They're, for all intents and purposes, always active, so why would you run cooldown if you don't necessarily need it for this set? Now, because there is no cooldown reduction required for this particular set armor, unlike many other set armors for Diablo for various classes, you cannot run a Captain Crimson set, unfortunately. You could potentially run a Gold to give yourself a little bit more damage against the elite packs that you will be encountering Greater Rifts. Speaking of which, I'm going to cast a Blizzard here, and then also my Hydra's there. As you see, it pretty much will automatically implode whatever walks into that particular area. So, speaking of areas, since Frost Hydras do cast Frost Novas based on the way we have our Kanai's Cube set up, you could, in theory, if you wanted to, and you actually have very good rolls, besides investing in resource cost reduction, you could invest in area of effect damage, because as you see, when they cast the Frost Nova, that's a very wide circular radius, which is considered area of effect damage. Now, keep in mind, that is very dependent on the roll. I would preferably invest in the resource cost management if I have the opportunity over necessarily area of effect. If you can get both in one particular roll, that's what you would primarily like to see. Now, in terms of legendary gen augmentations, there's only really one way you can do this particular armor set. You need Bane of the Trap because your Frost Hydras are going to be slowing things naturally based on how our ruins are set up and the other abilities that we have here. So you want Bane of the Trap. You also primarily want a Enforcer. Now, why am I recommending Enforcer? Remember, Hydras are considered pets. So you don't really want your Hydra heads to die. You want them to be tanky. If you invest in Enforcer, that was a 3 minute and 39-second clear time on Greater Rift 65, which is the equivalent of Torment 14. That just shows you how fast and efficient this armor build is. Usually, if it's unoptimized, you probably are going to see yourself somewhere in the 5 to 6 minute range on that. Okay, this is a Greater Rift 70. Greater Rift 70, we are going to have to change up the strategy a bit as things get more aggressive. What you're going to want to do here is cast Frost Hydras without casting the Blizzards, unless you see, case in point here, an Elite Pack. The reason why is there are a lot more mobs coming at you. There's more mobs as you get higher up in the Greater Rift, and they are a bit more tanky. Resource management is very important in this case, as you can't just go gung-ho channeling and casting wherever you please. If you do that, you're going to run out of Arcane Torrent very fast, which will put you in a position where you will get killed a lot. So what we do here is, as you see on the screen, we are pacing where we're placing our Hydras. We place a Hydra always very far ahead of us to scout enemies. Remember, the way this game is programmed, any particular enemy that sees you, even if it's at the corner of their eye, like they're at the corner of the edge of the screen and they see you, they are automatically going to chase after you. They are hostiles for a reason. So this is why you have the Hydra scout ahead. And basically they are Operation Human Shield for all intents and purposes. So that's what you want to do. Case in point here. Now, higher Greater Rifts, you conserve the Blizzard. You wait and see. If you see there's a large area, such as here, cast one Blizzard. Remember, our ruin that we picked allows for Blizzard to stay for long periods of time. And I just hit Paragon 1270 for those of you who are asking how high is my Paragon in particular. Now, again, it's a matter of placement. Always have one lead the pack and have one guard the back area of you. And always try your best to position yourself in the middle of channeling these Hydras, or not necessarily channeling, because they're not being channeled, they're being casted. Anytime you see a Elite Pack, and there's a Hydra near it, cast the Blizzard. This is a very simplistic strategy where it's very foolproof, guys. It's actually one of the easier wizard builds to follow, and it will take you extremely high in Greater Rifts without potentially high investments. Now, keep in mind potentially high investments, I am talking about legendary gems. My recommendation is it depends where you are. If you are playing Season, usually you are probably going to struggle around Greater Rift 60 to clear Torment 13 without proper optimization. My recommendation is if you have ancient legendary pieces of the armor, don't be afraid to level them up at level 60 or level 65 if possible. If you can. If not, go for a 50. Don't worry necessarily about wasting a gem. Yeah, it might take a little while to level them up in the beginning of the season. However, you can always overwrite a augmentation to a armor piece with another gem. And as you get higher up in the Greater Rifts, particularly if you're able to clear a Greater Rift 70, let's say 3 to 4 minute clear time, you should, in theory, be able to farm back up a level gem that you had at 50 or 60 within maybe half hour to an hour if you are playing fast and efficiently. Case in point there, here was cast a Blizzard, have the 2 Hydras, one in the back, one in the front of me, and just basically lead things. Now, the good thing is, because we are using a lot of resource cost reduction, it's not eating up a lot of Arcane Torrent, but you still have to play smart on higher Greater Rifts. Case in point here, there's not a lot of enemies on screen, so it's not necessary for me to cast and channel a lot. As you see, I'm not using Flame Ward too much, because I still, thanks to the 4-piece bonus of this set, don't take a lot of damage. I only really going to reserve it for maybe the Rift Guardian if I see fit to. Cast a Frost Hydra, cast a Blizzard. As you see, that was a matter of 2 or 3 seconds, and we one-shot a Rift Guardian on a Greater Rift 70, which is basically Torment 15 difficulty. Very simplistic strategy. This is one of the best wizard set armors you can do. There is a Legacy of Dreams variation of this particular armor, Frost Hydra, which uses, obviously, mixed pieces of armors to get out a higher damage bonus. You can rock that route. I have not covered that particular armor on the channel ever because I actually prefer the Typhon set over it. Even though I really think this should be called Typhoon, and they just didn't want to put an extra O in it. So I think because it looks like a python on the mask, it's supposed to be Typhon, but I don't know, maybe Blizzard can give some clarity in regards to that, maybe, in the comment section. All right, so this is a Greater Rift 75. I took you through very low Greater Rifts, and I'm taking you through very high Greater Rifts to show you how far this is going to push. Now, the particular armor that I am using is, ironically, not fully optimized. I know every once in a while I get in the comment section, oh, I have better stats than you do for my armor. Yes, that's nice and all. Keep in mind that, as I've always mentioned in these videos, when it comes to Diablo 3, it is about the journey, not the destination. Sometimes people will get very lucky in RNG and get that Primal Ancient to drop super fast. Sometimes you do not. Sometimes you may think investing in full intelligence and forgetting your critical hit damage is good. Sometimes it's not. It depends on the class. As I say, these guides and these particular armor sets are just that. They are a guide to show you an fast and efficient and optimal way to play your armor, but as always, it is a work in progress. As I've mentioned many times on the channel before, when it comes to content, I do not just play Diablo 3 24/7. I also am covering Monster Hunter Rise, which recently dropped. I do cover sometimes wrestling games when they do come out, and I do sometimes mix it up with other games. I do not invest 24/7 just to Diablo 3 content. So, if you see something in a guide, chances are it is still a work in progress, which we update you season by season on the particular armor set's progress that I use. Now, another interesting comment that came up was, how did I clear Greater Rift 150s if I'm using insert armor? Well, keep in mind for Diablo 3, you have multiple characters that you could use. You can have up to 10 slots. Now, I have been playing Diablo 3 since it came out, meaning the fact that Diablo 3 is like, what, 6 years old maybe? roughly let's say a little bit more than 6 years old. It is currently, how long on the Switch it's been out? About 4 years almost on the Switch. Now, when it comes to Diablo 3, I've played a lot of Diablo 3. I was playing Diablo 3 when the highest Torment difficulty was Torment 13. Torment 13 was basically the equivalent of getting to a Greater Rift 150. Basically what I mean is, back in the day, it was much easier to get to Greater Rift 150. Then around, if I remember correctly, it was Season 20 of Diablo 3. So that was basically 3 seasons ago. Maybe it was actually even Season 19. Blizzard decided that the game was getting a little stale, and they increased the amount of Torment difficulties by an extra 3. In turn, it skewed the difficulty setting to make things much, much harder. When I achieved Greater Rift 150 in my Whirlwind Barbarian build, the one that I do not actually feature on the channel, because keep in mind, I have 10 characters, and I show you seasonal guide characters that I've used from previous seasons. That is why I achieved 150. Usually it's not with the armor. Now, with this armor that I am showcasing for you today on the channel, on average, not optimized, you will probably be able to push between Greater Rift 85 to 90, depending on if you follow specific playstyle. Now, if you get lucky and you get Primal Ancient Legendaries, and you get perfect rolls on your armor slots, and you just dedicate all your time to just playing Typhon and no particular armor set, you can potentially get to Greater Rift about 135 primarily on your own. A really good player can potentially get to Greater Rift 150. Now, for people who are questioning, how can I get to Greater Rift 150 solo, you would need pretty much Primal Ancient Legendaries with perfect rolls with every desired stat. Then on top of that, you would need Ancient Legendary Gems that are over level 100 in the desired gem stats that you need. Then on top of that, you would need to augment the entire set of those Primal Ancient Legendaries with gems that are level 100 or higher. In short, it may take you 6 years to get that perfect armor to clear a Greater Rift 150 by yourself. With the Typhon set, if you have it fully optimized without going super crazy with Primal Ancient Legendaries, and you're doing this with a group of free or very skilled Diablo 3 players, you should be able to clear a Greater Rift 150, depending on your skill level. Now, another question I was asked, do I play Diablo 3 solo or do I play online? I do solo play. I used to play online when this particularly came out very early on the Nintendo Switch. The problem particularly with online on the Nintendo Switch for Diablo 3 in particular is the fact that people generally like to play super fast, speedy armors. So let's say you are playing a for fun armor, like maybe the Typhon or Typhon set, or you are playing something weaker, like let's say the Helltooth Harness Witch Doctor set. Those are not primarily fast, speedy builds. They are push builds. In theory, what usually happens is people will tend to not want to play with people who are using push build, when they're not using super speed builds, and will basically either leave the room or somehow kick you out of the room. So that is generally why I generally do not play multiplayer when it comes to Diablo 3, because it is very hard to get a room that stays in the room or that really wants to particularly Greater Rift grind efficiently. But in theory, if you want to achieve a Greater Rift 150, you either have to hunt for all Primal Ancient Legendaries and follow the advice I said, where you augment every armor piece with legendary gems that are over 100 and have completely perfect rolls on every item. This can take you a century. My recommendation, if you want to get to that 150 for bragging rights, and you didn't play in the earlier seasons where it was much easier to obtain that number, you will probably have to link up with some friends or make some friends online. And to that, I say good luck to you, because it is a mixed bag in terms of the community. Now, Hydras are pretty good. Some people will not kick you out of the room, but primarily it is a solo build type of armor. Now, I don't focus on group play armors in particular because I'm more focused on solo play, as it is much easier to achieve things on your own in Diablo 3 as opposed to trying to accomplish them with primarily strangers online that may get frustrated if your armor is at a higher or quicker pace than yours. And it does happen a lot more than you think. A good situation where I could give you an example was when Mundanugu came out and Bone Spear Necromancer. I played both of those armors online for a seasonal journey, and usually what happened, particularly with Mundanugu, is that I could speed through Greater Rifts in about 2 to 3 minutes on my own, and I would usually end up having my particular partners and randoms that I met online very frustrated because I could speed through everything and they just couldn't keep up. And that tends to happen a lot with a lot of the particular armors that are considered S tier, which is why even when you see leaderboard placement is based on solo play, which is why solo play in particular for Diablo 3 is more emphasis. But if you want to get to Greater Rift 150, you have to invest a tremendous amount of time now, and you have to get perfect rolls on things. It takes a long time. If you have the time, and probably you're playing Diablo 3 all the time, my hat's off to you. You probably will be able to achieve that. Maybe if you're just playing it 24/7, if you get lucky, maybe you'll get it in 2 to 4 years, but it's really tough. Maybe if you're lucky, friends have extra pieces and can drop them in a hole that you have, and that will make life a little bit easier. Some people do that. It's very rare nowadays because there is no, obviously, a trade system in Diablo 3, so keep that in mind. So that hopefully will address every comment that I have received as of recently in Diablo 3. Now, keep in mind there is no such thing as bad comments. Positive feedback is good. Constructive criticism is good. Constructive feedback is just as good. I tend to answer every comment back. Obviously, I answer these particular questions usually in video. I also do answer it in the comment section as well. Sometimes it may take me a little longer to get to you on the weekends because obviously it's the weekends and I am probably not near a gaming console or a computer on my weekends. I'm usually probably, well, for now, watching basketball. But, so definitely keep them coming. Always appreciated. As you can see here, that was a Greater Rift 80, 3 minutes and 45-second clear time. Most armors are not going to be able to do this. So this is super S tier. The only thing that is potentially faster, depending on optimization, is Chantotum Veer, which is available in the playlist. I will be covering in Season 23 a little later down the line. So keep that in mind. No intentional rhyme. Thanks for watching. Make sure to give this video a like and subscribe, and I will see you for the next Diablo 3.